fundraiser is Anna Roosevelt Douglas. Anna, where are you?
At the table. She's at the table.
From Naples, Florida, beverage distributor Duncan Cameron. From the Iowa Quad Cities Club, application industrial engineering Doug Peterson. From Bettendorf Classification Manufacturing, Dick Klein. From Clinton Classification of Big Brothers Big Sisters, Mitch Weldon. And from North Scott Classification A Carnegie, Merle Anderson. Todd Ashby has a guest. Todd?
Hello, I have here with me today Rob Hill. Rob is a sales representative with the Isle of Capri and the Waterfront Convention Center. So if you're looking for a fantastic facility to hold an event, please reach out to Rob.
Linda Miller has a guest.
I have a guest, Sean O'Hara, today, and he is my intern today. So,
Hi, Sean.
And Jen Slavens has a guest.
I guess I'd like to take just a moment, if I may, Chuck, to really let you know, this is our Rotary story come true. Demi, if you would stand up. Demi came to Bettendorf, Iowa 18 years ago, and Bernie Vogel, who was our longtime piano player, took him in, and he lived at Bernie's house. He attended Scott Community College. He then attended Augustana College. Through Rotary, I offered him an internship at Northwest Bank and Trust Company, and he interned with us for a little over a year. He then went on to get a master's degree at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and he has been working in international finance since then with the Stanley firm out of Muscatine. So those of you that are new, this is what Rotary is all about. He came from Haiti and came from the poorest of circumstances and is now an international financier and able to go anywhere in the world and do good for people. Thank you.
Well done, Jim. Thanks for doing that. All right, Harry, we're ready for some more songs.
Shall we do Gilligan's Island again? In that case, turn to number 100, That Rotary Wheel. Number 100 in your books, to the tune of Peggy O'Neill.
The blue and spokes of gold, that rotary wheel, turning fellowship to all, that rotary wheel, serve the power that makes it go round, serve and each turn with joy will rebound. When personalities binds nationalities, that rotary wheel.
And to 76, Smile.
There are smiles that make us happy. There are smiles that make us blue. There are smiles that steal away the teardrops as the sunbeams steal away the dew. There are smiles that have a tender meaning that the eyes of love alone may see. And the smiles that fill my life with sunshine are the smiles that you gave to me.
And happy birthday for our October Rotarian. Ready?
To you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you.
Very nice.
All right, today is a lucky day for us because we have a new member. SK, would you come up? David, would you come up as well, please? Please welcome SK and David.
Thank you, Mr. President. Give me a second to catch my breath. I'm so drunken this morning as he came in. Guess what? He had 2 rubies on his plate. He didn't have even one when he left, so the other club must be doing great. I tried my best to get his first ruby. I think he just got it before he left. So, anyway, it's just, yesterday was a great day for the Americans of Indian origin. We celebrated Mahatma Gandhi's birthday yesterday. He would have been 143 years old if he was alive. Well, anyway, this month we have a very, very important day. It's a World Polio Day. As you know, the Polio Foundation is coming up exactly 3 weeks from today. I hope we'll be doing something as a club on the World Polio Day. As you know, India has been removed from the polio endemic country because there's no polio incidents for the last 1.5 plus since January 17th. But it'll take 2 more years before we can call India as a polio free. We probably have given India most of the money. In fact, the first time we gave about $2.5 million. In total, we have given $165 million to India. And of course, they raised a lot more. In total, Rotary has given $1 billion to wipe out polio from the face of the earth. Imagine it's taken much more than that, about $6 billion to do this. But we have committed $1 billion to remove polio from the surface. We still have 3 million countries. So anyway, it's a very, very delightful day for us to induct new members amongst us. So when David came in, I said, "You must be a lawyer. You look like one." Sorry, Jim. David, let's know what you do, everything about your life, past, present, your future goals and hopes in 2 minutes.
I can do that. I'm an attorney with my office is up near Biaggi's restaurant. I've been practicing law for 22 areas here. I'm licensed on both sides of the river. I formerly lived in Fort Byron, and we moved to Bettendorf in 2010. So I have my clientele is primarily small business people, banks, farmers, lots of farmers. And I do estate planning, wills, trust, probate, I do business planning, I do commercial litigation, and maybe I do a few divorces. So that pretty much encompasses my practice. I have, my wife is Katie Frank. She works with me. She's been working with me for 20 years. We've been married 21, and I have 2 boys. Benjamin, who is 10 and playing tackle football and loving it through Rising Knights, and Isaac, who is 13, and they both go to Golden Valley schools too. So, thank you.
Thank you. David, as our president puts the Rotary pin on you, wear that pin proudly.
Yeah.
You are now friends with over 1.2 billion Rotarians around the world. Welcome to Rotary.
Thank you.
Thank you, SK and David. Announcements. October 23rd, Rotary Day at Rotary International. Anybody interested? We need show of hands. Doug, are you going to go? Doug can't go. I'm going to try to go. Talked about last week, but 4 Iowa Quad Cities clubs are organizing a trip to Rotary International. It's October 23rd. It's a day-long trip. call me or see me after the meeting today if you can go. We need to get signed up early by today. Hopefully there's a couple people from our club who would be interested in attending. Anybody yet interested? Okay. It'd be a good day, and hopefully get some people to go. I know, Doug, how many are coming from Bettendorf? You know?
I don't know what the counts are. I
Yes,
didn't
Dave.
go a lot so far.
11.
Is that a Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Yes. So we can't let, we can't let Davenport be a celebrity. We need some. What's the cost? Cost is it $50, you know?
I think it's $35 plus transportation, something like that.
So I think it's around 15. Okay. All right, Laura, do you have the news today? Laura Adams, the news.
This is an abbreviated news report because I've been busy with the political season myself. The Durant Community School District has paid nearly $46,000 for Davenport Law Firm to fight its 3-year legal battle against newly restored high school principal Monica Rouse, a lawyer with the firm said. Rouse, who was escorted from the school grounds September 17, 2009 and terminated 6 months later, returned to her old post Tuesday after an appeal on her case went all the way to the Iowa Supreme Court. The district judge last week threatened the school board with jail time if it didn't follow a court order to fully restore Rouse to her previous job. Footings to stabilize, which that would have been fun. Footings to stabilize the Forest Grove School have been started, and the roof is the next item to be tackled in efforts to save the historic one-room schoolhouse. And in case you haven't heard, there is a presidential debate this evening. But in world politics, women in Togo have called a week-long sex strike. I do apologize to our guest. To back their call for the resignation of the country's president. The ban is supported by an opposition coalition of political parties, civic groups, and movements in the West African nation. They want the president, whose family has held power for decades, to resign. The opposition leader says the sex strike could be a weapon of the battle to achieve political change. We have many means to oblige men to understand what women want in Togo, she said. One of the women who was taking this stand said of her husband, "I have no choice, and he has no choice either. It is easy for me to observe it." There's a story there. "I am used to it. But I am sure my husband will accept what I have to explain to him." But another woman expressed skepticism that her husband would go along with the ban for 7 days. "He may agree at first, but as far as I know, he will change overnight," she tells the Associated Press. And that's the abbreviated news of the day.
All right, Sergeant at Arms time, happy bucks, pass $2 back. Who's happy today? Scott?
I have $5, not so much as happy dollars, but apology dollars for the debacle last week. Those of you that witnessed it, heard about it, or were a part of it, know what a ideological and functional disaster it was. On the other hand, I remind you, we should always look on the bright side. I'm not your surgeon, you weren't my patient, nobody died. So $5 for that.
Duck is here.
I've got some money to honor a distinguished fellow Rotarian for the service above self. Last Friday night, at a Gilda's Club event, Decker Clay was the master of ceremonies. And as part of his duties as master of ceremonies, he drew the winning raffle ticket for an all-expense-paid week-long trip to Las Vegas. Well, I don't know how anybody could be on the week, but the table where I was seated, people had bought 5 and even 6 or 8 of these raffle tickets. I reluctantly bought 1 ticket, and imagine how surprised I was when Decker called my number. So thank you very much again, Decker.
See the cash, baby.
Jim?
I have $5 happy dollars on behalf of Emmy. I've already done the introduction, so I won't do it again. But he has spent the last 16 years with Stanley Engineering, I said, traveling all over the world, handling their financial matters. They have cut back on their projects, and so he has now got his resume with him and is looking for the next adventure in life. If anyone has any connections with an international company that might be involved with international finance, but please step over and see him after this meeting. That would be having the Rotary Wheel keep going. Thank you.
Another $5 for the victory by the Bears.
In July of 2009, I experienced the second job reorganization in less than a year. And on October 1st of that year, I started my business. So it's been 1,096 days since that. I had the third anniversary of the business on Monday. So there's $1. No, I wish. But I just had the best quarter I've had since I started it. So here's $1 for each of those 100 days, $11.
I got $5 in honor of Scott Norman, because when Tom Howard said he was going on vacation, I had to follow him. Scott, I was really afraid. He made it so easy.
Scott is the true definition of service above self.
I'm in awe of his.
I missed a couple weeks, but those couple weeks I turned 36 and I celebrated 4 years of marriage with my wife, so I got $40. Here's $7, sort of mixed up. One Northwestern is still undefeated. The other one, take up a prize, going to combine with my finger. Combine always fun Saturday.
Anybody else happy then? I got one more. Yes, sir.
I'm sure Duncan probably put in $20 for the trip, so I'll match it, Dunk. I'm sure he put in $20. And just to remind you that Ralph and Gene did do the civil service interviews. It looks to me like they picked the right applicants. I don't know anybody who got any speeding tickets in the last 2 weeks from pissed off cops, but if you did, talk to Ralph, talk to Gene.
All right, thank you. And with that, Chris Glass to introduce our guest. Chris.
Thanks, Mark. Well, today we have the honor of having Congressman Loebsack with us today. And, before I do the introduction, the one thing that we wanted to look at, we had John Archer speak earlier this I guess it was this summer. And in keeping with the Rotary four-way test, boy, I slipped my mind for a second. Wanted to make sure it was fair to all concerned. And so we're bringing in Dave today. And before we introduce him, we just ask that everybody remains respectful, and there'll be time for questions at the end of the presentation, and everybody will have their fair chance to ask questions. Dave Loebsack grew up in poverty in northwest Iowa and raised by a single mother. His focus is on rebuilding the middle class and growing an economy that works for all Iowa families. He's a relentless advocate for Iowans and holds hundreds of meetings across eastern and southeastern Iowa each year. As a member of the House Education and Workforce Committee, he's fought to ensure our children receive a first-class education, make higher education more affordable, and expand training for Iowa workers. Dave's also a member of the House Armed Services Committee, where he's worked to expand benefits for our troops and their families and to strengthen the Rock Island Arsenal. Dave's also a member of numerous organizations dedicated to increasing bipartisanship and improving how Congress functions. So I'd like everybody to give a warm Bettendorf Rotary welcome to Representative Dave Loebsack.
Well, thanks, Chris and Mark. I really do appreciate it. It was nice of Mark to, at the outset, say, "Hey, here's the deal. I'm a friend of your opponent. Truth in advertising and all that." It was really great. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mark. I assured him, as was mentioned in the introduction, that I do believe in doing everything we possibly can to work across the aisle with each other. And this is it's a tough campaign. There's no doubt about it at the presidential level. And I'm going to have 3 debates at least, maybe more, with my opponent. And we have differences on the issues. And you'll be hearing some of that going forward here. 34 days to go. But at the same time, I've tried during my time in Congress to keep things civil, keep things above board and all the rest. That's something that I think is really important, that a lot of people want us to do in Congress, and there's not really a lot of that happening right now in Congress. as I think everybody in here would probably agree. And, you know, the discourse out there is just pretty ugly at times, and that's really unfortunate, to say the least. I'm not at all convinced that's conducive to sort of having this country move forward in a positive way, in a constructive way. We're going to have the election. It's going to be competitive. People are going to vote, and then once the election's over, from what I hear from everybody is it's time to move on and get this country moving again. I'm not guaranteeing that that's going to happen necessarily, given the dysfunction in Congress and in Washington, D.C. But that's what I'm committed to doing. I'll talk a little bit about some of the work I've already done across the aisle. Some of you know it, with Bobby across the river and that kind of thing. But I'm not going to talk for a long time because, first of all, Decker said he's leaving at 1 o'clock, no matter what. And I know Decker well enough now. He's one of the first people I met when I came here. I met the previous Bettendorf mayor and Decker early on. And so I'm going to do my best not to talk too long and to leave time for Q&A, that kind of thing. A couple of quick things at the outset. It was mentioned, I'm from Sioux City. I was born and raised in Sioux City. Single parent mom. I often talk about my background because it's really important to know who I am and the values that I have and what I stand for. I think it's fair to say that that really is grounded in large measure in sort of how I grew up in Sioux City. I'm the first to say that, the first to admit that. My mom struggled with mental illness. It's a big issue for me in Congress. I really tried to do what I can on that front. Not only for civilians, but especially for our military. I got a bill through Congress that allows the National Guard to embed a mental health professional in every Guard unit, pre-deployment, post-deployment, even when no one's going overseas on a mission, because mental health is a huge issue in our society. It's a huge issue in our military. The suicide rate at an all-time high in the Army, even higher in the Guard and Reserve. And Iowa has a heck of a lot of Guard and Reserve, as we all know. So I got that through, and I got it through actually with bipartisan support. Joe Wilson, who is the person you may recall from South Carolina, who said to the president, "You lie," on the floor of the House of Representatives. Joe Wilson, very conservative Republican, chair of a relevant subcommittee on the Armed Services Committee, in which I serve. He came to me after he heard me talk about my mom. And he said, "Dave, we have some things in common." And Joe's in the Guard, has been in the Guard. He's got kids who've been in the Guard. We talked about my bill. And Joe and I cooperated to get that bill into the law. So it's not unusual, I know, for politicians to sort of take their personal lives and try to apply that as best they can, whether in Congress or at the state level or at the local level. But that's just one area. I grew up in poverty, as was said. My mom had an 11th grade education, and she was a single parent. She couldn't hold down a job for any length of time because of her mental illness. And in the 4th grade, I remember all too well, we'd been to a couple of different schools, I've been to a couple of different schools, lived in a couple of different places, saw some ugly scenes that I remember to this day, having to do with my mom, her illness. We landed on the doorstep of my maternal grandmother, and I personally made the decision in the 4th grade that I was not going to live in poverty when I became an adult. And I started getting better grades, did well in school. We were fortunate enough to live with my grandmother. 4 kids, my mom, in a little tiny house in Sioux City. But we lived with her until I graduated high school. Sioux City was 1970. We survived in no small measure because my grandma was receiving Social Security survivor benefits. I would have made it through high school had it not been for those Social Security survivor benefits. I went to Iowa State University in 1970. My dad died when I was a senior in high school. At that time, it was possible, and I did it. I received Social Security survivor benefits until age 22, so long as I was a full-time student, and I was throughout. I will tell you that when people talk about prioritizing Social Security, it's personal. Social Security is why I'm here today in no small measure. And Social Security as we now know it. Not Social Security turning it over to Wall Street and gambling the futures of our seniors. So again, not to be too terribly personal, but But it is important that you know why I am who I am today and what I stand for, because it does have a lot to do with how I grew up. And, you know, people ask me, how are you different from other Democrats? One of the ways that I am different from a lot of Democrats is that I talk a lot more about personal responsibility than a lot of Democrats do. I think it's a mistake not to talk about personal responsibility because first and foremost, an individual has to make a decision for himself or herself to take that responsibility, whether it's doing well in school, whether it's going out trying to find a job, whatever the case may be. And I did that when I was young, and I've done that throughout my life. But at the same time, I do understand the importance of community, folks. When I was a senior in high school, the principal called me into his office. I was a little bit worried, you know, Gene Farrell's calling me into his office. Thought I was a good kid, wasn't sure, you know, maybe he found out something he wasn't supposed to find out. But he called me in and he said, here's the deal, Dave. I know that it's not been easy for you growing up, and I hear you're going to Iowa State. I've got this job here this summer in a high school as a janitor. We didn't call it custodian, and that was 1970. If you want that job for this summer, you can have that job. If you do a good job and you like it, you can do it every summer while you're at Iowa State, and you can do it during Christmas break. I did that. I took that job, I did that. That's how I got through Iowa State University. I was a janitor at Target in Ames while I was in graduate school at Iowa State University. And I like to joke that when it comes to cleaning the bathrooms, I know more about a green pad than my wife does. But that's another issue. At any rate, the importance of community, I think we often forget about that. That's where the Rotary comes in, as you know too, things that you do for the community. I know about Rotary International. I used to teach international politics and comparative politics. You folks do a great job, and you're a great service organization. I'm very happy that when we passed the Serve America Act, which by the way was a bipartisan bill, which after Ted Kennedy died, Orrin Hatch proudly said, I will go along with, I think it's a good idea to name this the Edward Kennedy Serve America Act. I was able to get through, as part of that bill, my amendment, it created the Volunteer Generation Fund, as part of the Serve America Act, the Volunteer Generation Fund. That fund helped establish the Davenport Volunteer Center. It's about providing limited funding for volunteer centers to increase their capacity for volunteers so they can do great things for the community. My interest in that came in no small measure from all the volunteers I saw locally and who came in from the outside to assist Iowa, and my district in particular, which suffered over half the damage in the 2008 flood, the Great Flood of 2008. That inspired me to offer that amendment so that we could increase the capacity for those service organizations so they could recruit more volunteers so they could serve the community. And I was here at the grand opening because it was my Volunteer Generation Fund money that helped establish this particular office here in the first place. So a lot of it does go back, of course, to my own background. I'm the first to admit that. That's in part why I got on the Education and Workforce Committee. Jobs in the economy being the key thing, it has been all along. And I will tell you, I'm on the Armed Services Committee, in no small measure, because I have two kids who are Marines. My stepson and his wife both went to the Naval Academy and helped get him in 1996, and he is having some problems with the bureaucracy because he'd broken his wrist playing football. Helped him negotiate the Department of Defense Medical Examination Review Board, otherwise known as DOD in Washington, D.C. milieu out there. But they're both Marines now, and they've been deployed overseas, and they're stationed at the Pentagon at the moment, so I get to see two grandchildren there, one in Iowa City and two there from time to time. But I think it's really important, that certainly from the military standpoint, that we do everything we can to properly train and equip these folks. And whatever we may think of a particular mission where they go and serve, we may disagree with the mission. I didn't think that we should have been in Iraq in the first place. But the fact of the matter is we were there. And when I got into Congress, I was not going to do anything that would deprive those troops of that proper training and that proper equipment to make sure they could accomplish their mission. very important, I think, for folks to keep in mind, those committees that I'm on, what I'm doing on those committees. When I mentioned jobs in the economy, I'm on the Education Workforce Committee. Education is the key. Certainly it got me to where I am today. I don't think anybody can deny education is really, really the key. Yes, we have to do other things. We have to have a proper tax and regulatory environment for companies to do what they can, to employ more people and to invest and all that. But education is so much the key here, folks. And I think people can almost universally agree on that. And, I talked earlier about working across the aisle. I have my own bipartisan sectors bill, which got passed in 2010 with bipartisan support. Republicans came on board with me. That's when I was in the majority. And I worked across the aisle to try to get support for that bill, and I was successful. I'm in the minority now, as you all know. What I have done is I've tried to take advantage, and I think successfully, the relationships that I built across the aisle when I was in the majority, to do what I can now in the minority, to get this bill, which is all about matching up the skilled workforce in the community with the jobs that go wanting because they can't find a skilled workforce. That's what this is all about. And many of you know about those problems. Even with 5.5% unemployment, there are jobs that go wanting because there aren't enough skilled people to fill those jobs in Iowa, around the country. But this is now about doing everything I can, because I know personally, and I've worked personally with Virginia Fox from North Carolina, who is way far away from me on most issues. We sat down and had breakfast. I talked to her about my bill. I appealed to her to try to get this incorporated into the reauthorization of the Workforce Investment Act, and we're on our way to doing that. It's about sitting down with folks, talking about the issues, finding the issues that are common between the two of you, even when you can't agree on most of the issues, right? And I'll just end on this and open it up to questions. Bobby Schilling and I, many of you know, you've read it in the Quad City Times, you've heard it probably over and over again, right? Bobby talks about it, I talk about it. Bobby beat Phil Hare across the river, Phil's friend of mine. Bobby and I need to work together on the Rock Island Arsenal, on the I-74 bridge, on the Thompson prison. Yesterday, when the word came about the Thompson prison, I was near Knoxville, Melcher, Dallas, far away from here. And I got a call from Bobby on my cell phone about the prison. I called him back. And we talked about all the work that we had done together on that, and how happy we are that that prison, we think, is going to finally move forward. It looks like it is. There's still going to be some opposition in Congress. I think we're going to overcome that opposition. But what I am hearing over and over and over again is that you folks want us to work together. You want us to work together on jobs in the economy. You want us to work together on the arsenal. You want us to work together on reducing this deficit and dealing with this debt problem hanging over our head. And there I worked with at least one Republican from Michigan to craft a balanced budget amendment on that issue, which I helped co-sponsor. And I voted for the balanced budget amendment, and that came up. This is the kind of thing I'm hearing from people all the time. Yes, my opponent and I have differences. Yes, we're going to talk about those during the debates and between now and November 6th. But what I hear, and you tell me if I'm wrong, what I hear is that you folks want us to put down our political arms eventually and move this country forward and actually get something done. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
This is the first time I've ever heard you speak, and you gave a very good presentation and a very credible presentation. We hear terrible numbers about Congress and the people that serve in Congress. In my world, I believe that honesty and integrity are the two most important things in this world. I understand from national polls that only 13% of the people feel congressmen have honesty and integrity.
On a good day.
On a good day. You are in the establishment, so you have a much better view of the other people in Congress. I'd like to have your opinion. What percentage of the congressmen are wiener, and what percentage of the congressmen are the kind of people we would support here?
And you mean Wiener with a capital W?
I mean,
Anthony Wiener.
I mean, Congressman.
Yeah, right.
Idiot.
Well, I couldn't put a number on it. I mean, you know, look, I do believe, you know, and people tell me, don't say anything good about Congress, you know? People don't want to hear anything good about Congress, you know? The fact of the matter is that the overwhelming majority of people go to Congress for the right reasons. They do. I mean, they're good people on both sides of the aisle. Not everybody, believe me, not everybody. I mean, but since I got there, when I first got there, I sat down with as many people as I could across both sides of the aisle to talk to them, not only about how to do the job, but to try to create relationships so that we could actually get some things done, right? And I have found that the overwhelming majority of people in Congress, at least in the House, that's what I know best, I know some senators, really do want to do the right thing. And almost nobody disagrees about the goals that we need to achieve. Where we differ is the means, obviously. But sure, are there people in it for the glory? Yeah, of course there are. There's no doubt about that. Myself, I mentioned to Mark earlier, you know, if you want to find out who those people are, and if you can't go to sleep at night, as I like to say, if you don't want to take a sedative, then you turn on C-SPAN. And, you know, there are members of Congress, you can go on C-SPAN at night, it's called Special Orders, and you can have up to an hour and talk about anything you want to talk about, all right? And I'm not saying everybody who does that is out for the glory and all the rest, but that's what a lot of that is. And I've done that twice since I've been there. I'm on the floor a lot, you know, but not during special orders. I've done it once, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it gets to what you're talking about too. Once because I thought Rockwell Collins should have the bowling tank deal. And they eventually did, and I was there with a group of people. The second time was this year when we passed the Stock Act. Remember what the Stock Act is? I was the first Iowa to sign on to that. That prevents me from engaging in any kind of insider trading. That's the second time I went on during special orders. I thought it was that important to do that, precisely because of the lack of confidence that the American people have in our institutions of government, especially Congress. I'm not worried about that lack of confidence in Congress for my own sake. I'm worried about it for our democracy and what may happen if this goes too far. I can't convince people that, you know, most members of Congress are really, probably I can't, they're really good people and all the rest. They are, they want to do the right thing. But they get caught up in the political partisanship, the hyper-partisanship that the leaders on both sides of the aisle want to engage in because they want to have control of the House or the Senate or whatever. And that's where this gets lost more than anything else. I know lots of folks on the other side of the aisle. We talk all the time. I'm in the Center Aisle Caucus. I'm in the Common Ground Caucus. I'm in the Fix Congress Now Caucus, where we talk about exactly these things. But we have to put it into effect. Now we have to convince our leaders that this is what we've got to do because the American people aren't going to stand for it any longer. Yes, sir.
What I heard you say is that overwhelmingly the people who run and get elected want to do the right thing. The question was, what percentage of the congressmen do you believe have honesty and integrity at their core? That's the question.
I mean, again, I don't know all of them really, really well to know, you know, so what's in their hearts and all of that. But of the people I know, I think the overwhelming majority of them are good people.
Honest and integrity.
I do believe that. I do.
That's what I want to
Now that may get me into trouble because somebody may say, oh, well, you know, but I believe that. I really do believe that. Yes, sir.
Last year, there was some bipartisan legislation known as the Jobs Act, to jumpstart our business startups.
Right.
Because small business has been such a flashpoint in campaigns nationally, locally, the goal of that was to relax some of the Securities and Exchange Act to allow local businesses to do crowdfunding, local vesting, some of the new trends out there, and allow small
raising more
businesses
capital
to help themselves.
That's right.
The last I heard, the rules have not been written since it was passed. Is it possible to get that done? And do you still believe, yes or no, if it's still viable to help small businesses help themselves?
Oh, of course it is. I mean, that, you know, why we argue sometimes about some things, I'm not saying, you know, that's what you're doing. So many things are no-brainers in this job. And what's frustrating is when politics gets in the way. and we don't get the things done that we need to get done. The Jobs Act got bipartisan support. It was a great bill. Like so many bills though that go through, the devil's in the details and in the implementation and writing the rules and the regulations and all the rest. And that's where then the bureaucracy comes in and sometimes takes over. That's where my job as a congressman is to continue to follow up, be vigilant, make sure they're doing the right thing, make sure that they're implementing it in the correct way. And if I hear, as I have from bankers, for example, on Dodd-Frank, that things aren't going the community bankers in particular, that things aren't going the right way, then it's my job to make sure that I'm in touch with the Federal Reserve Board or the FDIC or whatever the case may be, to make sure that things are done the way they're supposed to be done. In the case of community banks, don't put those folks with 10 billion or under in assets, don't put them in the same category as the big banks that actually caused the meltdown in the first place. Community banks didn't do it. But moving forward, we've got to continue to do this. Of course, small businesses are always going to need more access to capital. There's no way around it. And given the financial meltdown that we had, given the constriction of capital that we've seen, the overreaction, I would argue, in terms of the regulators themselves, and the problems that small banks and some credit unions have had because of those regulations, because they have to, I was just meeting with a banker yesterday in Newton, and he showed me this huge pile of documents he has to provide to conform to the regulations. He has to hire somebody else to do it. It doesn't make any sense, but there's been constriction of capital. You've got to make capital more available. And I had an amendment to that particular bill which makes capital more available to women, minorities, and veterans, who in fact need more access to capital. So we're still in the process to some extent, there's no doubt about it, but that's one of the big holdups whenever Congress or any legislative body passes legislation, is making sure that it gets implemented in a timely and proper fashion, definitely. Yes, sir.
Along the lines of the first question, most people that I talk to on either side of the aisle, in agreement with Jim, are just so frustrated with Congress as a whole. Could you comment on two things? Number one, everyone I seem to talk to firmly believes in term limits for congressmen and senators. And secondly, all the benefits that the politicians seem to have from a pension after 1 year in the Senate, or 1 term in the Senate, not being a part of the Obamacare healthcare laws. Is there anyone that's going to ever champion bringing those things under control?
Well, for one thing, that's why I signed on to the Stock Act immediately, and why I pushed that. I signed on to the Stock Act before the 60 Minutes expose, which was all about leaders in the House supposedly cashing in on insider trading and that kind of thing. No, I recognize that. I mean, people tell me this all the time. When I'm home every weekend. I'm out every weekend talking to folks, at the convenience store at Olds on 218, or at the Hy-Vee, or whatever the case may be. And this is what I'm hearing over and over. Term limits, I've never been one. I mean, I don't quite make the argument that every 2 years you can vote me out, and that's, term limits. I know that some people make that argument. I understand why people want term limits. But I will tell you the best way, and this is going to take more effort, that may never happen, but the best way to make sure that folks continue to listen to people is to have a redistricting process that is exactly like Iowa's, so that there's not gerrymandering. You saw what happened in Illinois. There are going to be 4 or 5 turnover seats maybe because of the Democrats who control the gerrymandering. In Iowa, we have a nonpartisan, truly nonpartisan way of redistricting. And all 4 of these congressional districts are competitive this time. That's the best way to make sure that somebody stays in touch and listens to people, not term limits. Now, I'm not sure that we can get that everywhere, but it certainly works in Iowa, I think. I've always said that, 12 years is a pretty fair amount of time for somebody to be in Congress, all right? But, that's informal. It's not like I'm saying that we should have term limits, six terms for, House member, 2 for a senator, and we have 8 for the president. But I think there are ways to do this, and redistricting is one of them. On the benefits front, it's, I say what I'm going to say at some peril because a lot of people just aren't going to buy it. The fact of the matter is, at least right now, in terms of health care, pension, all that stuff, Joe is on the campaign, but he's our press person for the office. I'm in the same boat as all the other federal employees. My pension's a little better because I put a little more in, the defined benefit part of the pension, because I put a little bit more in, and so that's part of it. I'm in Social Security just like everybody else. I get a defined benefit pension. I have a 401k, it's called the Thrift Savings Plan, where I put a certain amount in, government taxpayers put a certain amount in, and then I'm, it's subject to the market fluctuations, just like everyone's 401k. For me to get health care like every other federal employee, I have to be vested. I have to be there 5 years. I have to be 3 terms, so it'd be 1 term for a senator, and then they'd be vested. But just so you know, the health care law that I voted for, okay? The health care law says now, those who want to repeal the health care law, they need to read the bill. It says now that, when I'm not in Congress any longer, I won't have the same health care, and it's fine, because I voted for it. It's the right way to do it. I won't be able to get what my staff get. In fact, I'll have to go to the exchanges that get created because of the health care law that I voted for. And that makes sense. So if you want to repeal the health care law, I understand a lot of people do it for a lot of reasons. Just keep in mind, if you do, that members of Congress actually will go back to the way it was before, which is be in the same boat as all the other federal employees. So I could go on and on about all those benefits things, but that's the basic, those are the facts, the way it is. Yes, sir.
Last summer, a year ago last summer, the country was brought to its knees during the debt ceiling debate.
Yep.
And we were embarrassed by a downgrade on our credit. We have a very similar debate coming up now with regard to the fiscal cliff.
Yep.
Are you looking forward to that? And where do you stand on the items that are included in that discussion, specifically with the extension of tax rates, the extension of the payroll tax cut, so forth and so on?
Yeah, great question. Where to begin, and Decker's got to leave soon. I could be here talking to you about this for an hour and a half at least, because it's huge what we're talking about here. We're not talking about just taxes. We're talking about the doc fix too. All these things that happen, the AMT patch, all these things happen at the end of the year that Congress lets go until the end of the year. First of all, keep in mind, I didn't vote for the Budget Control Act in the first place, which sets up this whole sequestration thing. In no small measure because I was not at all convinced that Congress would get its act together. Even if you believe what Paul Ryan has said, and which was, well, nobody really took this seriously. We thought, that this would just be a threat and whatever. Well, I had real concerns about whether Congress would take it seriously enough that we wouldn't go off the fiscal cliff beginning in January of next year. So I voted against it. Also, I voted against it because it calls for a 2% cut in Medicare payments to providers. And they've already taken a hit, with the health care bill. And in Iowa, where we've got a real problem, as many of you know, with Medicare reimbursement rates, we have about the best health care delivery in America by state. Top 5, if not at the top. All the studies show that. Yet our providers receive about the worst, if not the worst, Medicare reimbursement rate. I fought hard over the course of the last 6 years to fix that geographic disparity issue. But I was not going to vote for something that would hit the providers with a further 2% cut if Congress didn't get its act together and come to some agreement about $1.6 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years, because I wasn't confident Congress was going to do that. Now on tax policy, I'll just say this. There was a Democratic tax bill and a Republican tax bill right before I was sent home by John Boehner to campaign. Actually, he sent this freshman home to campaign, but I'm here. And so what I did is I introduced my own version of tax extenders. I went along with the Democratic version where we extend, for me the goal is the middle class. We got to make sure that the middle class is protected. That's the bottom line. What I propose in my own bill, and you can see it, it's online, on House.gov. What I propose is to extend the Bush tax cuts for those up to $250, and then $250 and above go back to the Clinton era tax rates. But exempt not just 97% of small businesses, exempt all small businesses. However the SBA decides that's going to be defined. For a manufacturing firm, it's up to 500 employees. That's a small business. And also exempt small farmers, family farmers, okay? Exempt them as well. And then keep the dividends rate as it is, keep the capital gains rate, don't increase that, do all this at least for a year. So there is some kind of certainty out there. On the estate tax, keep it at 35% for another year, keep the $5 million exemption. Don't go back to 55 with 1 million, don't get rid of it entirely, just keep it the way it is. That's my own compromise approach to all this, okay? I'm trying to find some middle ground. We'll see how this all turns out. The last thing I'm willing to do is make any kind of prediction about how this is all going to turn out. You asked me if I'm looking forward to it. The only part of looking forward to it is that at Christmas time, I do anticipate being in Washington, D.C. at Christmas time. I will spend Christmas with my 2 Marine children and 2 grandchildren. And if we're working, you know, before and after, that's fine. It's got to get done. That's the bottom line. Thank you. Yes, sir.
The Simpson Bowl study that was commissioned by the President and Congress came back with recommendations that would have created $3 trillion in tax cuts, like $1 trillion in additional revenue over the next decade, and it was shelved and nothing was ever done. Why? And what can you do to reintroduce that?
Here's what I've done, and this was last year. I signed on to a bill. And again, it's not law, but I signed on to a bill, and I proudly signed on to a bill that would not only set up a fiscal commission like Simpson Bowles or Bowles Simpson, but it would require Congress to vote up or down on its recommendations. The reason we didn't in those small measures is because there weren't enough people on the commission to provide a 2/3 vote to get it to Congress in the first place. That's what happened, is the commission itself failed to report it out because they didn't get enough votes from within the commission, as you know. I signed on to a letter that was bipartisan, over 100 members, while the BCA was going on and all these other things, that would have said, go big, go to $4 trillion. Basically, what we've got, I think, is leaderships who can't decide on a ratio. I mean, a lot of folks say no revenues at all. Others, like me, say have some kind of a balanced approach. The math doesn't add up if you don't do a balanced approach. Some say they won't even take a 10-to-1 ratio. That's 3-to-1. We've got to just, Congress has to say, look, members of Congress have to say, look, the American people are telling us that this is a lot of baloney, that it's time. I mean, I could say worse, but I'm not, you know, because I'm being videotaped. But no, look, I mean, people are just fed up. They're just fed up, and that's what I'm hearing. I mean, I'm frustrated by this whole thing, as you might imagine, but not nearly as frustrated as you are, obviously, and other folks who just, you know, they look at Congress like, well, why is this so hard? And politics is a big part of it, there's no doubt about it.
Actually, one more question.
One more? Okay, thanks, Mark.
Get his and Mike's been waiting to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Nope, 2 more.
Him and Mike, just him and Mike.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, in your discussion here, you're telling us how you always want to work across the aisle, Senator, and yet when I see the ads on TV, it says you vote 95% the party line.
Yeah.
And so, how is that consistent?
Yeah, actually, it's not 95%. I think it's closer, you know, maybe to 90, 88, something like that, this Congress. There are a lot of reasons for that. You know, when you're brought bills before Congress, and again, I'm not trying to be overly partisan or something like that. I'm just telling you what the facts are, right? The bills that have come before the Congress, and nonpartisan sort of folks who look at where the parties have gone in recent years, okay? The studies that have been out there that are not partisan. I used to teach political science, and these are the kinds of things I try to look at as best I can. Unfortunately, the Republican Party has gone much further to the right than Democrats have gone in the other direction. And those are the folks who are running the show in the House of Representatives. And so, more often than not, they're pretty extreme versions of things. And I just don't think for my particular district, especially for my district, it's not something that I believe that the people of my district want me to be voting for. You know, if I were in Northwest Iowa, where I grew up, it'd be a different story. I mean, it's a different demographic and political makeup in Northwest Iowa. And my job is to do what I can to represent as many people from the district as I possibly can. And looking, you know, at this district, I'm trying to vote as much as I possibly can according to what I think people in the district want me to do. Yeah, one more, Mike.
I was just wondering why there's so much animosity, it seems like there's so much animosity. People are successful or businesses are successful. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because one of the businesses that's clearly referenced in one of your ads, recent ads, is John Deere.
Right.
And there's this thing about older, which you know John Deere is an international company.
Right.
So why is it bad for John Deere to be doing international business and for someone who's just a part of that company to be, why do they attack like that? Just like, I look at that and I see your attack as one of the largest employers in the district.
Yeah.
And it's not just this area, it seems to be across the board though.
I understand. Well, first of all, I'm from Iowa. I grew up in Iowa. I love John Deere. John Deere is an icon in Iowa. I know that. I've been to the John Deere plant in Ottumwa 3, maybe 4 times. I was there for their 100th birthday with the CEO of John Deere. This isn't about John Deere. This is about policy differences between me and my opponent. That's what this is about. My opponent has not, as far as I know, come out and said we should close the tax loopholes that incentivize and encourage companies to take jobs overseas. That's what this is about. My opponent has attacked me since I voted against the 3 free trade agreements on Korea, Panama, and Colombia as a job killer, as putting a stick in the eye of Americans and all the rest. Those trade agreements are going to do more harm than anything else in Iowa. These are NAFTA-style agreements. NAFTA resulted in 11,000 job losses in Iowa. It's my job to do everything I can to make sure that workers in Iowa are not harmed by what I would call unfair NAFTA-style trade agreements. This is about differences between my opponent and me. That's what the ad's about. And so clearly moving forward, we're gonna have our differences, we're gonna talk about this, probably have different statistics on each side and all the rest. But that's what that ad is about. It's not about attacking, John Deere, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm from Iowa. I know that John Deere is a good citizen. I know that John Deere is a great company. And as I said, I visited John Deere in Ottumwa. It's about talking about the differences between my opponent and me when it comes to these kinds of policies. That's what that's about. Hey, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Congressman, and on your behalf, our Rotary Club will be donating a book to the Bettendorf Library, taken on your behalf. Thank you. And on that note, we are adjourned.
Good to meet you. Nice to see you. You too. Good to see you.
Are you Joe? Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Cass. Hey, let me check. Good. I want you to be in the I will go to human services.
That's in my mind, yes, okay. Let's get you
But yeah, we're trying it out.
Great. Well, how about
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Let's get today. I'll send you Thank you. Nice Thank you.
You have a copy of your resume?
I do have. Hey, Dave, how are you? Good seeing you. Yes, yeah, okay.
First name is
I know the Grameen Bank, yeah, I know, because I did microfinance back when I was in Haiti, so I know Grameen Bank, a lot of Grameen banks, definitely. I did some microfinance. Yes, it is a good thing, depending on the aspect. Yes, thank you. I was, yeah, my word. No problem. Thank you. I think that's okay. Yeah, sure. All right. What we need to do is a couple of things. What I need you is send me
Okay, I got
I'll take on the August 30th.